Hi, welcome to the Victor Emmanuel Nature Tours webinar. I am Ben Reynolds, producer and host of the Vent webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. We are delighted to offer this educational presentation about birds, nature, and Vent tours. We hope you enjoyed today's topic on snow leopards of Mongolia, birds and rare mammals of the Mongolian wilderness with Rafael Galvez. Vent is thrilled to offer this intriguing opportunity to see the enigmatic snow leopard. Partnering with Ecotours Wildlife Holidays, we offer a wilderness-style experience amid the foothills of the Altai Mountains in western Mongolia. Ecotours pioneered snow leopard tours in Mongolia, and its record of success exceeds 80%. The detailed itinerary for this departure can be found and downloaded in the handout section in the toolbar. Also, you may ask questions. Please note that we will have a live question and answer session after the presentation. Now, back to our feature presentation. I would like to welcome Rafael to the Vent webinar series. Welcome, Rafael.
Thank you, Ben, for the excellent introduction. What I would like to say is that this webinar will address two upcoming dates that we're offering for the Snow Leopards of Mongolia tour, and I will get into some of the basic differences between the two. We have operated this tour 3 times in collaboration with Ecotours Wildlife Holidays and conservation partners in Mongolia. We have been successful in finding snow leopards every time that Vent has operated this tour. That's fantastic. The experience has varied from hours of observation while a leopard rested at a relatively close and safe distance to dramatic views of a more distant leopard dragging its prey ibex to a favorite eating spot. These experiences have all been wonderful. I would also like to emphasize that this tour is by no means only about finding snow leopards. In past tours, we have seen as many as 200 bird species, some of them quite uncommon for Eurasia, including waterfowl, cranes, raptors, warblers, buntings, and more than 20 mammal species, some of them quite rare. The birding and wildlife viewing during this tour are fantastic. I cannot emphasize that enough. It should also be said that this tour is for travelers of all levels of experience, from beginners to advanced birders, young and old. This year, 2024, the tour operates from the 1st through the 15th of September. Next year, 2025, the tour will operate from June 23rd through July 6th. We will be visiting the same locations during both tours. Please review the itineraries for each of these tours for details regarding seasonality, bird species, and weather. So Ben, if we could go back to the map, arrivals for both tours are into the Ulaanbaatar capital, after which we transfer to Terelj, just outside of the capital, for the tour start. Terelj is a beautiful forested mountain region where songbirds abound, where species such as Siberian rubythroat and spotted or Eurasian nutcracker are possible. The tour then proceeds to the western region of Hovd in the Altai range, where we arrive by plane to look for the snow leopard and many other rare mammals and birds. After several days in Western Mongolia, we fly back to Eastern Mongolia and visit 2 other spectacular sites. Gustai National Park, which is the realm of the primeval wild horse, and Gungalut, where we look for cranes and many bird species, and the Argali with its tremendous spiraling horns. It's a wild mountain goat. The order of the sites we visit in Eastern Mongolia may ultimately change depending on the details of our return flight from Western Mongolia. The differences between the 2024 and 2025 dates in terms of the wildlife we will encounter are relatively minor. We expect to see more migratory birds during September and more birds singing in their territories during June and July. The reason why we moved the 2025 dates earlier in the year was to comply with conservation regulations when it comes to time spent searching for the snow leopard. These sites are within a national park, and the conservation team we work with allocates these dates to minimize pressure on snow leopard populations. We are confident the opportunities to find the species will be high during both 2024 and 2025 tour days. So that being said, let's continue with the presentation, Ben.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for those opening remarks, Raphael. And now we will turn to your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ben, for introducing me and to speaking so eloquently about this offering, Snow Leopards of Mongolia. Without saying much introductory material, I'm just going to jump into it. So once again, thank you all so very much for joining us today. As Ben mentioned, I'll be presenting about Snow Leopards of Mongolia in support of the upcoming tour taking place this September 1st through the 15th. We have 2 tours that we're offering for Mongolia at the time, and there are still some slots open for the September dates, so please don't hesitate to sign up. At the end of the webinar, I'll have a slide with contact information for the tour operator for Snow Leopards of Mongolia, with phone number, email address, and also my personal contact information if you have any questions. So, as stated before, this tour is in collaboration with Ecotours Wildlife Holidays, and I co-lead this tour with Attila Steiner. This is one of my favorite tours ever. The thrill of traveling to Mongolia alone is intriguing and so much fun. Again, this tour is one of my favorites ever. Just traveling to Mongolia sparks up my imagination. Throughout our lives, we have created ideas about Mongolia, having heard of Chinggis Khan, and I will pronounce it Chinggis because that's the way the Mongolians pronounce it, and his nomadic hordes setting out for Mongolia and conquering the steppes across Eurasia. Chinggis Khan was the founder of the Mongol Empire, which he ruled during the first quarter of the 13th century after unifying the Mongol tribes. Mongolia connotes vastness and remoteness. The country is 3 times the size of Texas, or twice the size of the Republic of India. However, the population of India is 1.3 billion people, of Texas 28 million, while Mongolia is only 3.2 million. Gives you a sense of size versus population. Some of us have heard of the traditions of the Mongolian people, their horse riding abilities, the hauntingly beautiful throat singing tradition of the Mongolian people, their food, and much more. Mongolia also holds the 2nd largest population of snow leopards after China. While many flock to the Himalayas in search of the species, places like Ladakh in India, Western Mongolia offers much easier access to viewing sites for snow leopards, allowing opportunities to see this elusive and endangered magnificent cat at altitudes ranging from 6,000 to 12,000 feet in elevation, while the species is rarely found below 10,000 feet in the Himalayas. So that gives you a sense of why Mongolia is a favorable place to look for snow leopards. I have to stress now that this tour is not by any means an extreme tour in terms of the physical demands required to participate. Most of the wildlife viewing in this tour takes place in close proximity to our all-terrain vehicles, which we will be using to access these remote locations. We do not go scampering on rocky ledges chasing after leopards, but we use well-known safe outlook points that are accessible using our vehicles and do very short treks, rarely uphill to these viewing points. Our partners in Ecotours Wildlife Holidays, as Ben said, pioneered snow leopard tours in Mongolia. And I will repeat what Ben said at the beginning. The record of success is 80% with this tour. And in the past, we have seen snow leopards, spectacular views for lengthy periods of time. So while our primary focus in this tour is undoubtedly the snow leopard, this tour is by no means limited to that species. And we'll go back to snow leopards in a little while. During this tour, we see a number of Asian specialty bird species, including Mongolian ground jay, white-naped crane, lammergeier, Altai snowcock, Mongolian finch, saker falcon, and many, many other exciting bird species that are difficult to find elsewhere, but quite easy to encounter in Mongolia. It is also an exciting tour for mammals in general. In past tours, we have seen more than 24 mammal species, including Mongolian and goitered gazelles, Argali sheep, Siberian ibex, the legendary Przewalski's horse, the highly endangered saiga antelope, and a lot more. It is also an excellent tour for smaller mammal species, such as pikas, marmots, voles, gerbils, jerboas, especially around the camp where we stay in northwestern Mongolia. These smaller mammals abound. It's a great place to have excellent encounters with these species. So where is Mongolia? I'm sure everybody here knows, but just to reiterate, Mongolia is an independent country in East Asia, bordered to the south by China, and to the north by the Russian Far East, or Siberia. Confusion sometimes stems from the term Inner Mongolia, which you may have heard, which is a so-called region within China immediately north of the independent Mongolian Republic. 3 mountain ranges converge in Mongolia, the most prominent of which is the Altai range, which we will visit. So there it is, Mongolia in red. So what I will do is go through the itinerary of this tour and show you the highlights of each of the locations. At the end of the webinar, we can answer any questions you have about any of these locations. The itinerary that I will sort of run through briefly during this webinar is a little bit different than the one that is on the website, primarily in the order in which the locations are visited. All of the originally planned sites will be visited. There's just been some adjustments made with the date and time and the era that we're living in. But in essence, the itinerary remains the same. So the red squares that you see here indicate the locations where we will stay overnight. The tour starts in Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital of Mongolia. There are many options for flying to Ulaanbaatar, either via Seoul with Korean Air. A number of airlines offer options through Frankfurt or through Tokyo, in case you do not want to fly through China or Russia. Ulaanbaatar is the most populous city in Mongolia.
It is about 4,500 feet in elevation in the Tool River. About 1.5 million people reside in Mongolia. It is a really interesting city that is quickly exploding with development and new excitement. The city offers excellent opportunities for cultural visits to several museums for the arts, for anthropology, paleontology, culture in general. So we typically advise folks to get there 1 or 2 days in anticipation to rest after the flight. It's a long flight, to acclimate to the jet lag, and to have some free time to explore the capital from a cultural perspective. From Ulaanbaatar, we immediately go out to explore the mountains on the outskirts of the capital. In that region, we will also have opportunity for seeing some great bird species and some awesome mammals like the Argali sheep and plenty of other species. Birds can range from Mongolian lark, David snowfinch, Dorian partridge, chukar, and so on. So it's a fantastic part of the world to visit for wildlife in general. We have also seen in this part of Mongolia large numbers of migratory birds, plenty of warbler species, and nearly a dozen species of buntings, including Pallas's bunting, yellow-breasted, pine bunting, gray-necked, so on and so forth. So it's a lot of fun to see all these buntings that are akin to our sparrows migrating through. The region may appear barren, but every little bush that you find at that time of the year will have a surprising number of migratory birds. So after a couple of days of exploring the mountains near the capital, we will return to Ulaanbaatar and take a domestic flight to the primary destination for this tour, where we will spend most of our time at Hovd, including 6 nights at an Altai Ger camp. Located in the remote northwest corner of Mongolia, Hovd is a land of vast steppe valleys surrounded by giant mountains of the Altai range, and endless stretches of steppe and desert. This is the realm of the snow leopard. From here, it is also the location where we will find the bulk of the specialty bird species that make up this tour, including many raptor species such as cinereous vulture, lammergeier, and saker falcon, and of course, the snow leopard. So we will make from Hovd, from our Altai Ger camp in Hovd, several excursions to selected output points to search for the snow leopard. We are giving ourselves 5 full days up there to find this elusive predator. A local team of scouts and conservationists will already be there prior to our arrival, keeping an eye on the movement of known leopards within their territories. The last time that we did this tour, we found a snow leopard on the first day arriving to Hovd. And we spent hours viewing it as it rested on an outcrop, then stood up, stretched, scratched itself, sniffed, then it would coil up. It was like a giant domestic cat, just docile and relaxed. It was an amazing experience. And in prior tours, multiple cats have been seen. So the snow leopard is stocky, short-legged, compared to other cat species in the genus Panthera, to which it belongs. And I want you to notice those tremendous paws and that tremendously long tail. The tail is as long as the cat itself. The snow leopard has several adaptations for living in this cold and mountainous environment. It has small rounded ears to help minimize heat loss. Its large paws distribute the weight of its body in a way that it allows it to walk on snow. And the paws have fur on their undersides to increase grip on these steep and unstable surfaces where it hunts. The fur also on the bottom of its paws also help minimize heat loss. That long, flexible tail is there to maintain a balance in the rocky terrain. The tail is very thick due to fat storage and is covered with a very thick layer of fur. So these cats use that tail as a blanket, if you may, to protect especially the face when they're sleeping as they coil up. Snow leopards are vulnerable and endangered, extirpated in some parts of their range. The global population is estimated at fewer than 10,000 individuals. And unfortunately, it's expected to decline by 15% in the following decade. But that does not seem to be the case in Mongolia. The population, particularly in northwestern Mongolia, seems to be stable. And it is a fantastic place to look for snow leopards. So from the very small Khov city, when we land by plane from Ulaanbaatar, we set out en route to our Ger camp. And the roads will look like this, barely discernible from the barren surroundings, with magnificent views in the distance. We will be staying in Ger camps. The camp where we will be staying is in a wonderfully evocative region at the foot of the Altai range. Now, you may not see the camp in this photo. It's that little line of white dots in the center. The next slide kind of zooms in. There you go. And here is the camp from a different view with the steppe in the distance and the Altai range behind. This area is well in path for many migratory birds. And there is a lot of fantastic birding to do simply from after opening the door every morning of your ger. Here's a different view of our camp. And if you're not familiar with gers, they're basically what people call yurts. The word yurt comes from the Russian yurta. Ger is the Mongolian word. They are spacious. They do have doors. Some of the doors are beautifully decorated with traditional designs. These gers are also equipped with actual beds with mattresses and pillows and a functioning sink. The toilets and showers are in a separate structure located on one side of the camp. And there's also a restaurant ger where we have our meetings and have our meals and so forth. Because we are in a very, very remote part of the world, you will notice no other habitations in these photos. There is no electric infrastructure here. So the camp is equipped with a generator that provides a few electric outlets to each of the tents for a couple of hours in the morning and also for a longer period in the evenings. The gers are comfortable, spacious, warm, and evocative. In the past, maybe go back to this slide a little bit, just walking outside, like I mentioned earlier, I remember several mornings waking up because hearing the fluttering of wings on the outside of the ger itself and opening the door to discover countless wheat ears of 4 different species everywhere on top of the gers, outside the door. pied wheat ear, Sabaline wheat ear, desert wheat ear, northern wheat ear, and tons of Mongolian finches and masked wagtails and so on and so forth. So it's so much fun to be in the Gare. And of course, pikas are battling each other in burrows right next to your Gare. So it's a lot of fun. Although it would seem as if Mongolia is overswept with barren landscapes that all look the same, it actually features a diversity of habitats and ecotones that come into confluence in the Khövd region, including taiga, mountain valleys, vast steppes, and sandy deserts. It is all very scenic and grand. And these slight differences in habitats as we cross really large tracts of territory on our four-wheel vehicles provide an opportunity to find all sorts of animals. It is not uncommon to see herds of Bactrian camels just far out in the distance covering the range, or gazelles or saiga antelope. The saiga is such an enigmatic animal, and we will have an opportunity to see these endangered antelopes in Mongolia. Has some of the best populations for this beautiful creature. Or large groups of cinereous vultures in the morning waiting for the thermals to give them an incentive to get up in the air. Also a great place to see all kinds of raptor species, steppe and golden eagles, eastern and steppe buzzards, kites, saker falcons, so on and so forth. Also, as we're traveling through the region, it is really interesting to see how people live out there. It is so fascinating. As we're traveling along, we will see a lot of these obu shrines, which are, to our eye, they look like heaps of stones, which are used to worship the heaven and other entities. Typically, they bear this central stake and are wrapped in various layers of tarp and colorful plastic. And some of them have piles of artifacts or wheelchairs or crutches, no doubt part of some kind of traditional practice. I don't know enough about it, but it is said that they may be dedicated to spirit entities that dwell in particular places, such as a mountain or a riverbank, or maybe even an isolated bush or a tree. And these deities may comprise various master spirits of the land or water, sky, dragon divinities, or maybe some shamanic ancestors. So it's really interesting to see this, and just to see the gares, a lonely gare in a distant slope, and wondering how it is that these people live. During our time in Western Mongolia, and we had a wonderful experience, and our time in the camp, in the Altai Gare camp, culminated with a beautiful and moving performance by two master throat singers that came to visit us the final evening. Now, you may not have heard of this, but hume is the ancient art of overtone singing, which has been known from Western Mongolia and neighboring Tuva for centuries. And what is thought is that some acoustic element of the region's expansive plains against that massive thrust of the Altai range was conducive to an ethereal form of expression, which is characterized by the singer's otherworldly, and I mean otherworldly, ability to produce a whistle-like harmonic overtone while singing a guttural melody, all produced in the throat of a single individual. So it's in a sense, multiple voices being sung at once. Sort of like a gravelly rumble, like rocks under hoofs, while simultaneously doing this droning whistle like the wind, harmonizing as one. So this tradition is listed as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity by UNESCO. And I'm gonna play for you a video if you'll allow me. It's a short video, it's 4 minutes of this performance that took place at our Gare camp. And I'm gonna give you a little bit of an introduction as to what's going to happen. The woman that you see on the right is Solzaya Damba, and she's been turning heads in first festival circuits because this tradition is primarily been done by men. And she's one of the primary contemporary Hume singers. And we will see her in this video first playing a flute and then switching to a square viol with a neck carved into the neck of a horse. This is the Morin Kur. And the man to the left is Nansalma Nurdi, and he is wearing that beautiful deal robe, that red robe. And he also sings and plays the Huntov Shur, which is a 2-string lute with a camel hide cover. And the legend has it that it was given to the Mongolian people by a swan. So the neck is carved and painted like that of a mute swan. So before I play this video, I will ask for your patience. And that whistling overtone singing, you will hear done by the woman, Zolzaya, starting at around minute 2:45. She'll first play the flute, then she'll switch to the viol, and then you'll hear this otherworldly simultaneous drone and singing with that whistling that I was talking about. So let's get this video going.
câu nọ cho cái âu đó bên bên đây
All right. Wow. Did you hear Solzaya doing that amazing overtone whistling? It is just otherworldly. Mongolia, I'm telling you. So, moving on, our time in Hovd will culminate with visits to various large bodies of water, including Kharus Lake, presenting excellent opportunities for all kinds of interesting birds. We saw flocks of thousands of Pallas's sand grouse, Dalmatian pelicans, ducks, geese, swans, grebes, shorebirds. Quite an impressive list. So after 6 days in northwestern Mongolia, we will return to the capital for a brief period for one night and set out the next day to explore the Hustai National Park close to Ulaanbaatar. At Hustai, we will find gentler and greener slopes and rolling country. This is the realm of the Przewalski's horse, the sole remaining wild horse in the world. It is also known as the Tahi, or Mongolian wild horse. They are heavily built with a large head, thick neck, and short legs. They're buff-colored with a zebra-like erect mane. Przewalski's horse once ranged throughout Europe and Asia, and the steppes of Mongolia, which represent the greatest expanse of largely unaltered grassland, are their last outhold. As I mentioned before, Przewalski's horse are the only wild horse left in the world. The so-called wild horses that we find in the North American West or East Coast Barrier Islands or even in Australia are actually feral domestic horses that escaped from farmlands or ranchers and have returned to the wild. The Przewalski's horse is an archetypal wild horse. And we will have ample opportunities to get beautiful close encounters with these beautiful animals. So after our time in Hustai, we will enter the last chapter of our tour, which will take us to the Gun Galut Nature Reserve. This region is composed of several large lakes, riparian valleys, creeks, that are wonderful places to find waterfowl, again, shorebirds, raptors, a number of regulars such as ruddy shelduck, Hooper swans, taiga bean goose, and surprises like Baikal teal, ferruginous duck, so on and so forth. But the primary reason why we visit Gun Galut is to look for the white-naped crane. The white-naped crane is a threatened species with a breeding range limited primarily to eastern Mongolia and parts of eastern Siberia and China. It is important to remember that 11 of the world's 15 species of cranes are threatened with extinction. It is, to me and to many, always memorable to see these graceful birds. Throughout the world, especially out east, cranes are symbols of longevity, fidelity, friendship, and have captured the attention of bird watchers and lay folk the world over. So on that note, we will finish the tour, return to Ulaanbaatar for our final meal and our final checklist, and fly back home. Now, before I close the webinar entirely, I've also included some a slide with some suggestions. What's interesting about Mongolia is that up until recently, there had not been proper field guides to the country. Field guides have come out. One is published by the John Bufoy Publishing Company. It's called A Field Guide to the Birds of Mongolia by Gambold and Smith. And the other is called simply Birds of Mongolia, and it's available through Princeton or Helm. And it's by Sundev and Leahy. And they're both great guides. They're an excellent place to learn what birds we can encounter there. If you look at the itinerary that's posted on the Vent website, you will find many more resources, including books about mammals, books about plants, books about culture. And I always suggest that when you go on any tour from this point forward, that you look into downloading the Merlin app and downloading the pack that is pertinent to the region you'll be visiting. So in this case, you would be downloading the one for Mongolia. And it's a great way to have on your mobile device photos, range maps, and recordings of the vocalizations of all the birds that have been documented from that part of the world. So we are in a period of time when we have fantastic resources for spending an excellent time viewing wildlife in Mongolia.
Oh, thank you, Raphael. Now we're going to make a transition to turn our cameras back on. Great, thank you for that presentation. It was enigmatic to think about going across those vast stretches of landscape. So thank you very much. And thank you everybody for joining us today. Now we want to give you some of the details about this tour. As Raphael said, there are two upcoming departures, September 1st through 15th of this year, and then next year in June 23rd through July 6th of 2025. And here are some more details about that. The price is $12,795 per person in double occupancy, and internal flights are included. Raphael outlined some of the internal flights that will be taken. And if you have any questions, please contact Sharon Green, the tour operations manager at the Vent office. There is her email, sharon@ventbird.com, and her phone number if you would like to give her a call. So I'd like to ask the audience if they have any questions. Please put them in the chat or the Q&A section in your toolbar. And I'll also remind you that the detailed itinerary is available in the handout section, also in the toolbar. So, Raphael, I see up here that there is a question from Francis. Are there Siberian and demoiselle cranes in Mongolia?
Good questions. So I'll tackle demoiselle crane first. One could argue that the largest population of demoiselle cranes is indeed in Mongolia, that the largest percentage of the world's population of demoiselle cranes. And during our last tour during 2023, we saw something along the lines of 8,000 demoiselle cranes flying over us and wheeling directly over us and landing on adjacent fields. It was spectacular. A significant proportion of their global population was right there in front of us. Now, Siberian crane, on the other hand, is one of the rarest birds in the world. I've been fortunate to have seen 2 of them in Japan. They have been documented from Mongolia, and it is within their migratory trajectory. However, we have never been fortunate to see one during a tour, but there is a possibility one could be seen.
Here's a question about the weather. Raphael, could you tell us a little bit about the climate and what the temperature ranges, the highs and lows are?
Sure. I'll speak first about the September dates, since those are coming up right around the corner. September is the fall season in Mongolia, just as it is for us here, being all in the northern hemisphere. And the weather can toggle between feeling quite warm, not excessively hot, but quite warm. I'm talking about temperatures maybe in the low 80s when you are in the steppes of the lowlands. But when we get up to the higher elevations in the Altai range, particularly when we're looking for snow leopards, we're up against the elements. We're on top of the world. We typically climb to about 10,000 feet is where we look for the snow leopards. And it can be quite windy and cold up there. It doesn't stop us from seeing a lot of birds and mammals, but it's good to bring a lot of layers, a nice coat, hat, and gloves. But this can vary tremendously. September is a time when the weather is about to change. We don't see any snow at that time of year. But the winds and some storms can bring in some inclement weather and especially colder, gusty winds that can make it feel uncomfortable if you're not prepared. So we always make sure to bring layers. In June and July, the weather will be quite warm, and we're expecting it to be in the 80s to lower 90s, and quite comfortable when we get up in the higher Altai. Again, you'll want to bring at least a light layer to protect yourself, because up in the range, those cold gusts could come in, but it won't get as cold as it does in September. Some rain is expected in September as well, whereas we're not likely to see as much in July and June.
Great, thank you. Here's another question. Could you talk about the food and the drink? What is to be expected on this tour?
Right. So all of the food that we consume when we are in the Western Altai camp is prepared by our hosts, the conservation crew that is accustomed to receiving groups and preparing meals for them. So there is a cook that is in charge of preparing our breakfast, lunch, and dinner. When we're out in the range for the entire day, the cook comes along with us. So what kinds of meals are they preparing for us? A lot of stews, some fresh vegetables. The best they can do to make sure that we have a balanced meal. Tea, coffee, soups, sometimes rice and some sauce with some meat. There's also alternates for people that are non-meat eaters. Nothing extravagant, but good food and ample amounts of food for everyone to feel fulfilled. When we're in Ulaanbaatar, the capital, we do eat at a number of restaurants as we start near the capital, then crisscross back through the capital to reach the eastern part of Mongolia. So we will be eating at some really nice restaurants that offer Asian food or a more extravagant style of traditional Mongolian food, which prides itself in serving a lot of different forms of meat.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Raphael. It looked like that's all of our questions for today's live broadcast. But if anyone thinks of anything, feel free to email me, ben@ventbird.com, or Sharon@ventbird.com, or Raphael. You have your email up there, galvezbirds@gmail.com. So we want to thank you, Raphael, for your presentation today.
Thank you, Ben, for all your preparation and work and for hosting this webinar. And thanks to everyone for attending this presentation. I really hope to see you in Mongolia.
Yes, we hope that some of you are excited to sign up for this tour in the near future. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye.